Welcome to another edition of How to Fix It Yourself with Dave and Dave. Today we're going to be working on a 216 Rogue and we're going to do an oil change. Now, oil changes in general aren't that difficult. The only issue with the Rogue and a lot of other modern cars is that they have a lot of plastic airflow pieces. So this piece has to come out to get at the oil filter, which is down under here. So we need to take all these clips out, and normally we'd have to take a bunch of clips out of the bottom airflow panel, but apparently when I had the car in for transmission service, they took the bottom airflow panel off and never put it back on. So it does simplify our job, but it does bother me a little bit that they would do that, you know, take it off and just throw it away. Granted, I'm not sure how much real difference it makes, but you know, it is something that should be there. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and proceed. The first thing you need to do is take off the tire. Of course, you have to jack it up to take off the tire, so I guess the first thing you need to do is jack it up. Be sure you use a jack stand. We have a jack stand back over there so that you're safe. You don't have to get it huge off the ground, but you do need to get it off the ground. So that's where the oil filter is. The drain plug's just a little bit beyond that, underneath the frame, or just past the frame piece, and that'll come out easy. So we'll get under there first and pop out the drain plug and let the oil drain. Then while that's draining, we'll take off this air dam and get at the oil filter, so when we put the drain plug back in, we can then take out the oil filter. So that's kind of the plan, and we'll proceed from there. So it's a 14 millimeter, so we just need to break it loose. So we're gonna break it loose. Then we're gonna be sure and get our pan underneath. Now the oil is gonna stream, so you need to make sure you've got your pan far enough over so that when it streams, it hits the pan. Okay, and there we go. So we're going to let that drain for a little while and go clean up. So after most of the oil is drained out, you don't have to wait till all of it comes out, but you want to make sure a good portion of it's out. You need to get ready to put the bolt back in. Now, you'll notice that I put a new crush washer on. It's a copper crush washer. All Nissans use this, and it's a real good item to use on any vehicle, but you need to replace it. You don't want to use an old crush washer that's already been crushed and assume that because it's copper it'll seal. You can probably get away with it if you really had to, but it's not a good idea. So we're going to go ahead and put the bolt back in and hope we don't drop it into the oil pan. Come on, get in there, you bugger. I need to do this from the other side so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Oh, there it goes. There it is. All right. Always a good idea to bring a couple of paper towels with you to kind of wipe up. So at that point, once you just get it finger tight, it'll stop the drip, and you can get the oil pan out of the way, so you can use it for the filter when you get ready to take that off. So now you want to go ahead and get the oil out of the way a little bit. Grab your wrench and be sure you tighten it up. You want to crush it, so it'll take a few turns to crush that washer down there. and you're good to go. Now I will make a comment. Nissan, the factory, puts on bolts that have a very small hex head, and that works well for the factory and maybe the first oil change or two, but eventually they mush over. These bolts are not that expensive. Just go down to your Nissan dealer, or you can get an aftermarket one, but just go down to your Nissan dealer and buy a new bolt so that you have a bigger head, so you're not mushing it over and mushrooming it. All right, that takes care of draining the oil. Now we'll get after the oil filter. All right, so now we need to take these fender clips out. I've already removed one. There's a couple of different tools you can use. Some of these are difficult to get into. Now you'll notice that the Nissan ones have 3 raised points, which makes it very difficult to get in on the either side of it. But if you kind of work at it, you notice you can pop that off and potentially save the clip. Oops. Now these I put in have items on 4 sides, so you can see that it's easier to get at those. All right, at this point it gets to be kind of a two-handed job. Oops. All right, so once you get it loose, then it'll just drain into the oil pan. Try and keep from dropping it. Then wipe out the interior seal area. Make sure that a little of that excess oil gets on the that seal area. Then when you get ready to put the new one on, take a little oil and put on the seal surface here. So you should have some on the seal surface on the car and some on the new filter. Okay, so you want to hand tighten it, and I'm going to get an actual cap wrench to tighten it down so we don't crush it with the ones we used to take it off with. So go ahead and put the cap on, and you want to rotate it about 1 1/4 turns. So you don't want to over tighten it, but you don't want to under tighten it either. So that'll put that on, and now we've got our oil drain plug put in. We've got our oil filter on. So now we can go ahead and put the airflow part back in, and we'll be able to put oil in the car. Remember, when you put these in, you've got to have that center out. That accidentally got pushed in, so you got to have the center out. You can kind of squish the plastic parts back together again, so it'll fit a little better. Okay, so the first one's in, so the rest of them should be a lot easier. I went and got one of my spare ones that I know is the right size, put that in, clip it, and now we can see that they're all holding, and that's in good shape. So we've got that part done. Now it's just time to put oil in the car. We use a Mobil 1 oil filter. There's a lot of controversy and a lot of discussions going on as to what the best oil filter is, the best oil. Any of the real high quality ones will do you just fine on something like on a Nissan Rogue or an Altima, or you know, most vehicles. You know, there are some that require very specialized oil, but you know, we're using 5W30. We could use 0W20 if we were in cold country, but we're not, and so we're going to go ahead and use this 5W30. Now you want to check the you want to check the owner's manual to determine how much oil it's going to take. The owner's manual for this car says it takes 4 7/8 quarts to fill it up when you change out the oil filter. I've personally found that it never quite reaches the amount that the manual says. So my guess is we're going to be more like 4 1/4 or so. So we're going to put in about 4 quarts, start up the engine, get the oil filter filled up, and then we'll start looking at the dipstick and seeing where we're at and adding a little bit here and there. You don't want to overfill your engine, so try and be on the low side to begin with and work your way up until you've got it right on your dipstick. So we're going to stop here for a second and we're going to set it down and see where we're at on our gauge. So we've got about 3 quarts into it, so we're going to need to be down closer somewhere in this area. So we're going to put a little more in so you can use your fill gauge here to kind of determine where you're at. All right, that ought to be close enough to get it started. So we'll go ahead and start the engine, and then we'll start using the dipstick and kind of work our way into where we need to be. Pulled out the dipstick and wiped it down once, and you'll notice, if you can see that there's no oil at all on the dipstick whatsoever. So we still have a ways to go. So put the dipstick back in and let's see where we're at. Now we don't have to start the engine again because that filled up the oil filter and got the oil all over where it needs to be. So whenever this hits the right spot, then we can call it good enough. And yeah, we're right there, so we're right about halfway on our fill lines. That's a good spot to be. Just for grins, I'm going to throw in just a little bit more, and we'll call it good enough. There's not much left in here, but I'm not going to finish emptying it. All right, good enough. So now that we've got the oil level where we want it, we'll go ahead and put the cap on. And you want to lube up that oil seal a little bit with some of the used oil, and we're good to go. I didn't mention earlier that when you jack up a car, you want to be sure you put chocks under the wheels and make sure that you have the car secured, have the emergency brake on as well. So that's all it takes to do the oil change. We didn't have that lower pan, air dam pan down there, so we didn't show how to take that off, but it's the same thing as under the wheel well. Just has a bunch of those body clips, just have to pop open and they'll drop right out. Again, your choice on oil and oil style you want to use, or what oil you want to use, and filters. But I strongly recommend that once you get above 70,000 miles, 75,000 miles, even if you're using a multi-blend synthetic, partial synthetic, I'd recommend going to a full synthetic. I've always liked full synthetics. I've got good mileage out of my cars with full synthetics. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope this has been helpful. Please give us a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button. We'll put the tools and the items that we used in the description below. Thank you very much and have a good day.